What's good everyone, it's Fizzy here and I'm back again with another video. So in the last video, I showed you guys how to make a new wave Asake type beat. But in this video, I'm now going to show you how to mix your beats. So I'm now going to show you the stages and processes I go through when it comes to mixing my beat. And my way might not necessarily be the best way, but it's the way that works for me, and you just need to find the way that works for you. So without making things too long, let's get into this. The first stage of mixing is always leveling. Level your sounds. And I'm actually going to pull up a direct quote on what leveling is. So I found this definition here, and to me, this is actually the best definition out there. What leveling is, and leveling is also known as gain staging, simply put, is the process of setting the volume levels of individual tracks within a mix to achieve a balanced and cohesive sound. And in this, you don't necessarily need to make things the loudest or make things way too quiet that you can't hear it. It's just that everything will have to blend together. So what I like to do is that once everything is routed to a track, I actually lower every single volume down. So next, I then go to the loudest part of the beat, which is typically the chorus. So I'll just highlight the chorus here. So I'm now gonna gain stage everything. So as you can see, everything is now quiet, and I'm now gonna listen to the individual parts and bring up the parts that need to be brought up and keep things where they are. And another rule of thumb, never mix a solo or a mono. For example, let's say for example, I wanted to listen to the piano and how strong it is. Never just click it by itself and then you can only hear it by itself. Because if you do this, you won't actually get the full picture of what you're trying to mix. So now that I've leveled things off, the next thing that you want to do is now create space for your other frequencies. So by creating space for your frequencies, you're going to now EQ. So I'm actually going to EQ some things that I think are taken away from the bass. So first things first, I'm actually going to go to the piano. So in this tutorial, I'm only going to be using stock VSTs. I'm not going to be using external ones. The only external one I'm going to be using is my master, which is an ozone. What I'm going to do now is that you're actually just going to have to hear it. So what I would recommend is that you get studio headphones. Instead of using your laptop speakers or maybe other speakers that you have, try getting headphones. And if you can, you should also try use monitors as well. But the thing about monitors or studio monitors is that you're going to need to soundproof your room. So I don't have that, unfortunately. So that's why I'm using my studio monitors. And then if you don't know where to cut it off or where not to cut it off, what you can do is that you can over exaggerate. For example, this is the low end that I'm cutting out. And as you can see, you can't even hear the piano anymore. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring it back until the piano and the plug are sitting together and mixed together nicely. What I'm going to do now is that I'm going to try get some of the high end because I can feel it clicking when it comes to the piano. So I'm now going to mix the pluck now. So I'm going to take off some of the high end and roll it off. And now I'm just going to boost the low end just a tiny bit. So I'm now going to mix the first log drum. So that's already starting to come together. Next, what I'm gonna now do is mix in the synth. So again, I'm gonna take off some of the low end because this has some unnecessary low end, which is gonna take away from the kick and the log drum. So now I'm now gonna go to the log drum now. And again, I'm just gonna take off some unnecessary high end. And as you can see, I'm taking off some of the low mid and some of the mid. That's because when I'm using this log drum, it sounds a bit boxy. So what I'm now gonna do is that I'm now gonna lastly mix the kick. And what I'm gonna do is that the kick actually sits around 80 hertz, like the punchiness of the kick. So I'm just gonna go to around 80 hertz, yeah? And I'm just gonna slightly boost that. So that's already starting to come together now. Now, the next stage in when it comes to mixing is now adding in effects. And one thing I'll say is that don't overuse your effects, and also try not to underuse your effects. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go back to the beginning now, and I'm going to listen to other sounds and see if I wanted to add something new to it. For example, with this piano, I might want to add in a bit of reverb. So for my piano, I actually added in a flanger and some reverb, and this is what it sounds like before effects. And this is what it sounds like after effects. And I just think that actually suits the vibe a bit more. And yeah. So I know I said I was going to use stock VSTs, but actually in this one, I'm going to use Ozone Imager. And Ozone Imager is a free VST, so you can just go pick that up. So I'm just going to make this stereo a bit wider. And another way, even if you can't get stereo separation or you can't get Ozone Imager, you can also use this knob here and separate it. But I prefer to use Ozone Imager because I can actually control the parameters a bit more. So what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to actually add in a slight reverb onto the synth sound. So I just want to see what that will sound like. I'm liking the way the synth sound is sounding. I'm now going to move on to some slight sounds gaining. So basically, after you've leveled off your sound and added in your EQs and effects, you might actually lose some sound and some dynamics. So when we EQ our sounds and we reduce our volume, we actually lose some dynamics. And with dynamics, you actually now lose a bit of cohesiveness. So the way to now get it back is now to up gain again, which is by adding in extra volume onto it. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but that's how it goes. You just need to add in extra volume. So what I'm now going to do is that if you want to use a stock VST, the one that I would recommend is either Soft Clipper, or if you want to go and pay for it, is Saturation Knob. And Saturation Knob is what gives the sound a bit more dynamic and a bit more harmonics. So after doing that, you can just mess around with the knob. But yeah, I'm actually going to use Soft Clipper just because I said that I'm going to be using VSTs, stock VSTs in particular. In my log drum, I noticed that my log drum is a bit low, so I just added in a Soft Clipper and you're not going to see the volume go up. And then I also noticed that my pluck as well is sounding really thin. So I'm just going to again add in a Soft Clipper onto my pluck. After just using it there, I can actually say Sound Godizer is not better than Saturation Knob in my personal opinion. It makes the sound a bit muffled, especially on the low end. It doesn't saturate it the way that I'd want it to, and I feel as if I have less control. So I would say if you're in a tight squeeze, do use Sound Godizer and learn the parameters yourself. But for me personally, I just wouldn't use it. So with everything going on, I'm actually quite happy with what I have here. So everything is sounding a bit more cohesive, but I started to notice that while I was upstaging my sounds for example, my log drum and my bass in particular, my percussion is now sounding a bit low. And the way people like to combat this is actually by making a bus. So what they'll do is that they'll hit control and select what they want and bring all of them to a channel here. So what you'll do is right click, side chain to this track only. See? So what I can do by grouping them all together, I can actually control the dynamics of this whole sound. So the shakers and everything, I can control them myself. So now what I'm going to do in this chain is that I'm actually just going to add in a compressor. So I know that I said I was going to use stock VSTs, but I'm going to actually use the Wave CLA 2A, as this is one of my favorite compressors when it comes to making buses. So now that I've mixed my sounds, what I'm now going to start to do is that I'm going to start to pan. So I'm going to go to the beginning of the verse, and I'm just going to start panning some sounds. So I slightly pan the synth sound to the right, and this again creates a bit more space for the artist. So when it comes to making beats, yeah, If everything is all in the middle, it's gonna sound way too muddy and everything's gonna clash. No amount of mixing, no amount of gaining or leveling can help it. So what you need to do is that you need to create space for the artist, and how you create space is by panning. So what I'm gonna do, what I just done is that I panned slightly to the right. So before, even though you're able to hear the synth, it sounded as if it was clashed from other sounds. But by slightly panning it to the right, I've now created a lot of space for it to now breathe and let it do its thing. Now I've now done the same for the tremolo signal. You might have not even known that the tremolo signal was there, but once you pan it to the left, it still creates a bit of space for the tremolo signal to now cut through the mix. So all in all, that was actually the mixing process. There's not a lot that goes into it. And you're now probably wondering, Fizzy, how come you didn't mix every single sound? This comes up to a very, very important point. If you actually pick your sounds correctly and right, you don't actually have to mix too much. As long as you have amazing sound selection, you won't have to mix too much. And how you get amazing sound selection is by one, going to reputable sources. For example, come to me, I make amazing loops, or go to Splice, or go to other places where you can find loops. You can find some good ones off Reddit, but sometimes you might not always get the best sounding quality. So just go to places where you know that the quality is always going to be good, because if the quality is good, your mix is also going to be good. So the simple line is, bad sounds equals bad mix, good sounds equal good mix. Always remember that. So with that, I actually don't have to mix every single sound. Just a bit of leveling and panning will help it a lot. So now that I'm done with the main sounds and done with the mixing and leveling, what I'm gonna now do next is now go to Ozone. So in Ozone, you can see that here that you can actually make your own EQ. You can also see here that you can also add in your compressor and maximize your beat as much as you can. So and you can also see up here that you can also do a master assistant. So if you're too lazy to mix or master your beat, you can just use Ozone. So sometimes I get too tired after making my beat and just use Ozone, the master assistant, and then I tweak it to my own liking. First thing first, when it comes to mastering, go to the chorus of your beat, which is typically the loudest part. So go to the loudest part and just highlight that section. And again, with mastering is more or less mixing, but for everything. So your mastering is going to affect everything. So as you can see, I'm increasing the high slightly because sometimes the high end is not cutting through enough. So I just wanted to cut through a bit more. So now that I've finished off with the mixing, it wasn't too much going on. It's just that some highs, ducked out some of the high mids and some of the low mids, because the kick and the log drum, especially adding it with the bass, can make the mix sound a bit muddy or a bit overpowering in the low end. And sometimes you just need to cut some of it out. So as you can see here, I made a bell sound and I didn't reduce it by too much. It was just by -1 dB. And when it comes to this stage, trust your ears, don't trust your eyes. Sometimes you might see a nice looking EQ, but it might sound horrible. Sometimes you just need to trust your ears and train your ears. So what I like to do is that I'll bring the ceiling down slightly to around 2 dB, because when I'm sending it out to people, they want to have enough space. Maybe they want to do something else. So that's what I'll do first. So I'm just going to see what it sounds like now. I'm now done with the compression of the master. So this is what it sounds like before without any mastering. It doesn't sound as loud, and some of the kick, for example, is not punching through the mix properly. But once you now actually add in the mastering, this is what it sounds like now. So there's not that much that goes into it. So first of all, you need to make sure that you level your sound. Leveling is key. Always level. The number 2, create space for your mix by, for example, panning or maybe adding some stereo separation. Number 3, EQ. EQing is very important. This is so that your mix doesn't sound muddy or it doesn't sound too bright or anything like that. And when I mean by bright, I mean just too much high end. And then next is that you also make sure that you group your sounds. For example, if things are together, for example, the drums, group them together. And then when it comes to mastering, I recommend Ozone. That's because I've been using Ozone for so many years. I know how to use it like the back of my hand. Just make sure that you find a nice master. I know some people like to use a fruity limiter, but when it comes to using a fruity limiter, there's only so much that you can do with it. Just go and make sure that you find a nice mastering tool that you yourself know how to do, and you read up on it so that you don't waste your money on it. And make sure that you also get good quality sounds. Good quality sounds is what can make or break your mix. Like I said, bad sound equals bad mix, good sound equals good mix. So always make sure to remember that. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. So that's it from me, guys. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to drop a subscription down below, and yeah, follow the channel to help the channel continue to grow. We just hit 500 subscribers. We're gonna be reaching 1,000 soon, even 1 million soon. Someone said it in the comments, last week that 1 million is coming soon. So yeah, make sure to follow the channel, guys. And anything that you guys want to know, for example, any other questions that you have about mixing, mastering, sound production, sound selection, sound quality, you guys can actually follow my Discord down below. Join the Discord server, and I'll actually answer all your questions there. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. Peace.